function of a barrel is a vessel for slow oxidation, first and foremost.
Barrels are used either for fermenting and or aging a wine.
Secondarily, it's also a vessel to maybe add a little flavoring component to the wine. So you can think of a barrel sometimes, especially new barrels, as a spice mixture that a chef might use on a dish. You know, there's a way to kind of spice your wine up a little bit.
As a winemaker, the only thing that I can add to the wine is the oak flavor profile that I'd like to add to the wine. So like I'm not adding vanilla syrup and huckleberries and whatever.
New barrels will offer a lot more flavoring or spice to a wine than an older barrel will.
And every barrel cooperage or tonallery has a different kind of flavor profile because they're toasted differently, they're made in a different way, they come from different forests. So that is giving me the ability to craft the wine with those flavors that I'm looking to achieve.
Putting a wine in barrel will give a lot more weight and richness and texture to a wine, softens the edges. You know, it doesn't eliminate acidity, but it does soften that acidity a little bit. It also helps the aromatics and the flavors to kind of evolve a little bit. They're more cohesive. They have a different profile to them.
We've crossed from Acqui to Asti today in Piedmont to come to the Gamba cooperage. Gamba is one of the 2 remaining coopers in Italy, known for its large casks, but it's the only one that does a complete production of barriques, smaller barrels, in Italy. Their only competition are the French coopers. We always say that depending on the wine, some of the great wines, they may age in a barrel for a matter of years. In the case of Brunello, it's 2 years in the barrel. That's a long time. That's why it was important to come here today and see the way these barrels are made. There's not an automated line of production here. There are different phases where the wine is made, and the hand of man, they have developed some machines to make their job a little bit easier and make their job a little bit more effective in how they put the barrels together. But the hand of man and the quality, the eye of man, is very, very constant here. They're not slamming things together and pounding them out. They're making each barrel and putting together passion and care the same way the winemaker does. The winemaker has to choose his barrels very carefully to get the ultimate expression in the wine. You can't take shortcuts in the winery, you can't take shortcuts in the vineyard, and you can't take shortcuts in the cooperage either.
Another question is, how big are the barrels that you're using? If you're using a small barrel, that wine is coming in a lot more contact with that oak, so you're getting a lot more influence from the wood. Are they huge barrels, you know, these Foudre in Alsace and in Burgundy that are hundreds of years old and 10 people can walk inside of, which are imparting very little?
So the most common, at least out here in California, is the 60-gallon barrique or the 225-liter barrel, which is the world gold standard for barrels. That's for Bordeaux, I guess it's 228 liters if it's Burgundy, but we use both out here. If you're looking for less contact, it's actually becoming more popular in the New World, in California even, or Washington, Oregon, to go with larger barrels. They're like 500-liter barrels.
It's going to be a much slower oxidation, and because of the less surface area to the wine, it's also going to give off less flavor if it happened to be new, versus a smaller barrel. A small barrel is going to give off a lot more flavor and have a lot more oxygen exchange.
Another factor is how closely are the staves pushed together? How fine is the grain of the wood? Because that's all going to affect how much oxygen is getting into the wine.
You know, these wood staves, they're porous. There's cracks. There's air coming in and out of here.
What we call micro-oxygenation, where over time, there's wine that's in the barrel that is evaporating through the staves of the wood. It wouldn't happen in a stainless steel vessel or like a plastic, you know, whatever, any sort of vessel that doesn't have permeability. You would just have the liquid stay there forever. But if you're in an oak barrel, part of that wine is actually seeping through the staves. Oxygen's coming in at the same rate, and you're getting a slow oxygenation of the wine, which gives you that sort of aging and softening of the wine over time that you're looking for as a winemaker.
It's a winemaking decision at the end of the day. How much oxygen do you want your wine to see during the process, during the winemaking process? From the time you crush the grapes until you put it in a bottle, how much oxygen do you want your wine to encounter?
What's very important, we as producers go and look first and foremost for the quality of the origin of the wood, actually. Where does the wood come from? Yes, from the center of France, but what forest? What type of wood? What does that contribute to the wine? What does that help bring out in the wine?
The type of oak itself, or wood itself, is a big factor. Two of the most common are French oak and American oak. So French oak, it's cut a certain way. The grain of French oak tends to be much tighter, more fine-grained, versus American oak, which is a different species of oak, and then it's also cut differently.
If you're aging or fermenting your wine in these barrels, they all impart, generally for me, kind of a baking spice quality. This French oak imparts, you know, the clove, the nutmeg, the cinnamon.
Then you also have to think about the toasting of the barrel. The toasting is a huge factor. So you take a French oak barrel and you scorch the inside of it and toast it up until it's like black. You stick wine in there, that's gonna have a lot more flavor addition to the wine than a barrel that hasn't been toasted at all.
American oak famously is very heavy in dill, coconut, a lot of vanilla. And that's typically where you see most of that oak going towards bourbon, with a few exceptions in the wine.
Just because you hear the word American oak doesn't mean that all wines in America are made using American oak. Or that, oh, this wine is from Italy, this wine is from Spain. They could never have used American oak. They must only be using some kind of European oak. This is completely dependent on what the winemaker wants to use, what they want to purchase, what they want to impart or not impart into their wines. Spain loves American oak. It goes back to Spain having a really great relationship back in, you know, like 15th, 16th century. And then there's a lot of French oak being used here in America because some winemakers have no interest in putting any coconut or dill into their wine. They want to use the French oak.
There's like a million, degrees between American oak, Hungarian oak, French oak. I've done Slovenian oak, Russian oak, you name it. There's all kinds of stuff out there.
So what's going on here is that the heads of the large cask, the very thick wood, through boiling water, they've been given a slight curve so that the head of the large cask is concave to resist the pressure of the wine. Then they cut a small hole to insert a dowel, which helps make sure they stay together. They put a sort of a reed between the two that helps prevent any leakage, and then they're actually pressed together. You see, he's put the dowels in, he's lining up the reed. That's going to give it a nice seal. He's going to leave it exposed on the end. He'll trim it all off later. Work that was once done by hand and rudimentary tools. Today, this is a step of the mechanization. He's got a little hydraulic stapler to just hold it in place for now. Still very carefully controlled by hand. You notice he hasn't just flipped a button and let it slam together. He does very gradually, lets it come together, make sure everything is in alignment. So the hand control, quality control, the eye of man, the hand of man is still very much involved, even though there is some mechanization. And he's adding one stave at a time. It's not an assembly line. You're going to have a much lower instance of any what they call product failure because every step is very, very carefully monitored.
The most expensive wines in the world have some form of barrel aging. Typically, we'll see French oak used the most. It's also the most expensive. French oak is the finest grain, and it can demand prices anywhere from $800 to $4,000 a barrel.
Average French oak right now is $1,000, maybe up to $1,200. It's kind of like for your run-of-the-mill, where you have, higher-end cooperages that are charging much more than that for special barrels.
Again, it goes back to kind of thinking about a barrel as, in this case, as a spice that's it's in the winemaker's kind of toolkit.